We're back with part 2. I didn't put part 2 in the title down here. It was going to take too long. Part 2 of episode 61, an episode all about choice. June 7th, 2019, Veto NOverride. NOverride. Almost sounds like a drug name. I should call up Glaxo and offer them that name for something. It's probably going to be a derivative of Novocaine or something. Or maybe, oh yeah, let's invent a drug. Because you know when you go to the dentist and they squirt the Novocaine in you and you guys are talking like this so they can do some work on your teeth and you won't feel it. But if you're numb, your mouth, your lips are numb, you can barely talk for hours afterwards. You need something else they can put in there to make all that go away. Maybe you don't want to because maybe it's still mitigating some pain. I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe the pain is all done. Just the Novocaine hasn't wore off. So we're going to give you some of this NOverride. It's going to make the effects of the Novocaine go away. I am Gary Pierce. I decided to call myself a choice pro, because I'm doing some things in the choice arena somewhat professionally. What that would be being a clinic escort. A couple days a week, standing in front of an abortion clinic here in Raleigh, helping people get past the protesters. It's noble work. And by the way, a quick shout out to Sharon. Sharon, have you found the show yet? One of the protesters. I said, I do a podcast. She said, oh, what is it? Well, normally we don't talk to them, but I just, kind of a brush by. Yeah, do a podcast. Have you seen it? Oh, what is it? I'm not going to tell you. What would be the challenge in that? She's probably found it by now. Hi, Sharon. I won't talk to you like this out on the street. Nope, will not do it. Not going to do it. Okay, so this part of the show, this part 2, is going to be the debate. We're going to head for the North Carolina House. There they are. All the desks are now full. Going to go into session and do this debate. It's going to end up in the vote that we've already seen, the failure to override the governor's veto of the. Can I get this correct? No, I can't remember what it's called now. The Failed Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And as Gelia said, when they said it's not an abortion bill, abortion's right in the title. It is an abortion bill. Oh, and it occurs to me, one other thing when we were talking about what the real reasons for this bill and this vote were. The Republicans say it's to keep babies who were born alive from an abortion to make sure that they get health care. They are not killed illegally, no matter what bills are out there. It's a live human being. You kill it, it's illegal. That's what the Republicans say this bill would do. What they intend is to just put it's one more brick in the wall. And my impression is that compared to the bans that we're seeing in Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and a bunch of other states, the 6-week bans, the 8-week bans, the 0-week bans. This was, I think, I would call this, kind of weak sauce. Now, nobody involved in the pro-choice movement, from the leadership perspectives, is happy with me calling it that because they want everyone to take this very seriously. They take it seriously. I take it seriously, but I think that compared to the other ones, North Carolina is truly a purple state. This is kind of showing it that the legislature, well, they will try more extreme abortion procedure restrictions, and they have in the past tried them. This is the one that they got up for a vote in the whole House and Senate, and got to the veto override point, and they couldn't override the veto. Compared to those other bills, this one is on the weak side. But it's still serious. So what is the point? Well, the point is, if they had been successful, is to be a chilling effect on abortion procedures, to make it potentially more difficult for doctors to operate and to work. And also, whether it's succeeded or failed, what they've got now is ammunition for the 2020 election campaigns. All of the senators and representatives in the North Carolina legislature are going to be up for re-election in 2020. And you will see very soon, if we don't see them already, ads pointing to their vote in this override saying, North Carolina Democrats favor infanticide. They want to kill babies. You are going to see that. All right, if I can settle my voice down a little bit, let's go see what this debate looked like. And I promised some commentary, so I'm going to do some. We'll see what happens. Just getting started now. Haven't quite gavelled the session into order. Pardon my hand in the upper left. I was adjusting some audio on the camera that's going to go away.
Take their seats. Visitors will retire from the chamber. The sergeant at arms will close the doors. Members and guests are asked to please silence all electronic devices. This afternoon's prayer will be offered by Representative Dixon. Members and visitors, we're asked to please stand for the prayer and to remain standing.
Get your hand out of the way,
Gary. Pledge of Allegiance.
My first commentary is, well, they open the session with a prayer. I want to say something about that. Now, I know this happens. I know that this has been declared legal, even though it is putting religion at the beginning of a public event. Most courts have eventually found this to be legal. I'm not religious. I'm not screaming non-religious. You can consider this war on Christianity if you want. But if I go to a church, if I'm visiting in a church and I'm visiting there for the whatever they're doing, the ceremony or whatever, and they ask people to stand, I will, out of respect, because I'm in their house. This isn't their house. It's not my house. It's all of our house. And so when they do this and they ask me to stand and they, and they're making basically church out of this, well, it rubs me wrong because this is not me. This is not something I participate in. I know that they consider this country to be a Christian country. The Republicans consider it to be a Christian country. It is not. It is a secular country. This particular prayer was fairly, not beat you over the head with religion, but we're going to get a Jesus moment here toward the end, which is pretty much, one version of many religions that exist out there in the country, and certainly not what people like me who don't have any religion have any belief in. I also like the way he puts a "thee" in there. It's his only Old English reference in vocabulary.
In a manner pleasing unto thee and beneficial to generations yet to come. I pray for this in the name of Jesus Christ.
There's our Jesus.
Amen.
So I don't know, maybe once in a while they get a Muslim to lead something.
Of the United States of America.
And then my commentary on this is I don't do this because this reminds me way too much of every totalitarian country where
the gentleman from Harnett, Representative Lewis, is recognized for motion.
Mr. Speaker, the Journal for June.
They are going to go through a few procedural things, and I only left a little bit of the procedural stuff in, and then we will move on from that. So I don't do the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't do the
Members, our nurse of the day with us today is Anne Marie Adaletta from
nurse
here
of the
in Raleigh.
day.
Thanks for being with us today, ma'am.
Now, again, I consider them things that totalitarian countries do, pushing patriotism by rote, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Steve is recognized. Set forth committee report. Clerk will read.
Okay, still more procedural stuff going on here.
Senate Bill 151. Blake.
So we're moving past it.
Members, a couple of special recognitions. First of all, on motion of all members, Chair is happy to extend the courtesies of the gallery to delegation of ladies here from the Concerned Women of America. Would y'all please stand so we could welcome you?
So they're going to be up in the gallery, and they are part of the anti-choice. I'm going to work on getting this, the pro-forced birthers. Hashtag pro-forced birthers. Put that on Twitter, too.
County, Representative Bell, Chair is happy to extend the courtesies of the gallery to Mackenzie Henson and Paige Henson. Would y'all please stand so we could welcome you?
This is part of our civics lesson. Those women were sitting right in front of me. Routine things that go on at the legislative sessions, our civics lesson for the day.
Senate Bill 359, the clerk will read.
And we are off and running.
Senators Krawiec, Heiss, and Harrington. Senate Bill 359, a bill to be entitled an act establishing the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Okay, so I got the name really wrong.
Representative McElrath is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me find my motion. Sorry. I wasn't ready for you. Mr. Speaker, I move that the House pass Senate Bill 359, Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, notwithstanding the objections of the governor.
The lady from Carteret, Representative McElrath, has moved that the House do override the veto of Senate Bill 359. The lady has the floor to debate the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, friends, Senate Bill 359, the governor says, is not necessary. And I say it is necessary. It's absolutely necessary, as the babies that are born from abortion are not protected in our statutes. Senator McKissick asked in the Senate committee if there are protections for these babies in our statutes. The staff informed him there are protections for babies in utero.
Okay.
There are protections for 1-month-old babies.
Right.
The staff says there are no protections for the babies that are born alive.
Don't know what happens
Breathing,
between 1 minute and 1 month. But
that are the victims of a failed abortion.
the Democrat, she didn't call it a botched, called it failed. The Democrats say
North Carolina, the governor says
the baby is born alive, it's alive. It is protected
that it
as
doesn't
much as
happen.
you and I are.
And we know it does. We've had witnesses that say it has happened in North Carolina.
Okay, remember the article I did in part 1? It hasn't happened in North Carolina that anyone's got any evidence
We don't know
for.
for sure how many times it happens because we don't have any reporting mechanism or requirements here in North Carolina.
And that is true.
But the CDC says in the United States there are over 200 of failed abortions, babies born alive.
143 in 12 years out
Over
of
200
9 million
just in the few
plus.
states that report. And there's not many states that report. Maybe about 13 states are reporting. And it's estimated by CDC that there's over 400
I didn't see that in that
babies born
report.
alive. But the governor says it's not necessary. On May the 25th, we no longer have a ban of 20 weeks on abortions here in North Carolina, as Judge Osteen struck that out of our statute. We can have more of these late-term abortions now because we don't have that ban. Now, you'll hear from the minority side, I'm sure.
We don't have late-term abortions just because women want them. That just doesn't happen.
Ban is still there in a way because of viability. And who determines that viability? The doctor who is there to kill the baby.
Yeah, Pat would much rather that
That's
she
who
get to determine
determines
it.
the viability. So do we have a ban? Of course we don't have a ban now because of this ruling, this court ruling. So what we need to do in this bill is protect those who will probably be more now because of the late-term abortions we'll have in this state.
Once again, they don't happen very often.
More victims, more little babies breathing, heart beating, that could be put on a table.
We do get pretty overwrought,
like
and it's going to get worse later.
To die, or to be put in an incubator with no heat or no blanket. What kind of care is that? All Senate Bill 359 is doing is asking that we protect those babies and give them the same standard of care that babies of the same gestational age that are born naturally get.
They have that protection.
Why should those babies not have the same rights
human beings.
as a baby born naturally? This is not about abortion.
It's illegal to kill them.
It has nothing to do with the abortion procedure or getting between a doctor and a woman.
It has everything to do with all those things.
A baby and that baby's rights. Baby boys, baby girls, our future women.
Nobody, by the way, is being convinced one way or the other in this or any of the other arguments that are going to be seen. Everybody knows exactly how they're going to vote. Everybody knows.
The gentleman from Cleveland, Speaker Moore, is recognized to debate the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been in the House since 2003, and if I've ever debated a bill on abortion rights, I don't recall that I have. I haven't filed one.
This is where I'm stealing some footage from WTVD because he was underneath
the. It is an issue in many ways where reasonable minds can disagree about life and about these issues.
Underneath the balcony.
And it's one which goes to our deepest beliefs and our core values. Well, today I'm not debating an abortion bill either. This is a bill that deals with what happens when a child is born. Whether there was an intent that this child be aborted or not, this child was aborted. This child was born. You know, we debate these issues in the public sphere and in the political discourse all the time. But every now and then, you see the real faces. You see the real human stories. I've heard some say this doesn't happen. There aren't any failed abortions. There aren't these issues. I had the privilege to hear from and then today to meet in person two ladies who will later be introduced when I'm back in the chair. But I want to tell you their story because I think their story is worth hearing. The first is Gianna Jensen. Gianna has testified before Congress. She has told her story. Gianna was intended to die before she was born. Her medical records indicate that her 17-year-old mother sought a late-term abortion in the 30th week of her pregnancy. It was during a failed saline abortion that she was born alive, weighing just 2.5 pounds. After surprising the doctor, she spent a few months in a NICU unit before being placed in foster care, and then she was eventually adopted by a family when she was 4 years old. Because of the failed abortion attempt, she was born with cerebral palsy. She had to learn a lot of ways how to walk, how to take care of herself.
So I looked for details and background on these stories, and the only thing I found were from pro-life sites, which just basically
because I heard her say not too long ago in this very building,
told the same story.
She sees that as a testament to her life, and that struggle has made her a powerful voice.
And these two women show up at hearings like this at
Claire Colwell, who also spoke earlier today. Her mother was 13 years old when she learned that she was pregnant.
They show up at legislative sessions like this all over the country. They're brought in by the Republicans to
Claire was a twin.
Bolster their case.
Abortion removed her twin, but did not remove Claire. A few weeks after having the abortion, they didn't realize that she was a twin, that she was there. The mother still felt kicking, realized there was a baby there, and because of how far she had developed, they ended up not having an abortion. But
So
Claire
so
has
basically,
had all
this story
sorts of
has
health
nothing to
issues.
do with
She
the bill
ended
that
up
we're talking
having,
about today, just
she
an
had
emotional
dislocated
appeal.
hips. She had club feet. She had to wear a cast on her feet, a harness, and eventually a body cast to fully physically heal from the injuries she suffered in the womb. I can tell you that she later in life met her birth mother, and that she's forgiven her as well as the other lady I mentioned. These are amazing personal stories. These are amazing women to meet on their own right, not just because of what they went through, but because of who they are as people and how they took tough circumstances, and they're just amazing people. I mentioned I've been here since 2003. I can and every one of you have similar stories I'm about to tell. You can think of incidents where we've argued bills that really didn't matter. I mean, we argue a lot of bills. We've argued about whether to turn left on red. I mean, we've talked about a lot of bills over the years.
So he's going to try to pump this particular bill up as super important. And it has caught a lot of attention.
Think of those bills or those issues that you dealt with when you said, you know, I'm taking time away from my family, I'm taking time away from my business, I'm taking time away from my community, and this is why I'm here. These are the issues that matter. And very rarely do we deal with issues of life or death. Friends, this is that kind of issue today.
Or not.
This is one of those issues. I can think of no other issue that we've dealt with since I've been in the General Assembly since 2003 as important as this bill today.
Really? No, nothing else.
Now, I know that many on the other side of the aisle are being pressured to vote a certain way. Many are being told this is about abortion rights, access. It is not that.
It is.
It is not that.
It is that.
You can be the most strident pro-choice supporter and vote for this bill.
Nope.
And vote for this override.
No.
Because this is about what happens when a baby is born.
And when we're done, none of the Democrats will, except for two.
What kind of civilized society cannot stand up and say you have to take care of a defenseless baby when it's born, whether it was wanted or not?
So once again, we're not convincing anybody here. We're just
today.
Making rhetoric.
This bill is a matter of life or death. This bill, if we sign it in, if it goes into law, will save lives. And if you don't believe me,
or will do nothing at all.
Just look into the eyes of some of those who did live. My friends, I encourage your support of this motion to override the veto.
Nothing in terms of saving lives, but plenty in terms of chilling the availability of abortion.
From Beaufort, Representative Kidwell, rise.
And by the way, you're going to notice that
The gentleman has the floor and may debate the motion.
everyone speaking today,
Speaker.
except for one, will be a Republican
gentlemen,
voting or talking about
Today we're going to
sustaining the
vote
override.
on the opportunity to override Governor Cooper's veto of the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. Note the title of the bill.
Yeah, it's got the word abortion
Born
in it.
Alive.
It's not
Governor
an abortion
Cooper
bill,
told
but
us
it's
in
got the
his
word
veto
abortion
letter,
in it.
And I quote, "We need to move on from these divisive social and political issues and talk about the real issues facing the people of North Carolina." Governor Cooper, I could not disagree with you anymore. The life of our constituents is the primary reason we are here.
I'll disagree
We
with Governor
must
Cooper too.
protect them
That's a
as
fairly
elected
standard. Well, what about
I'd like
redirect,
to
point
the following,
everybody
which we
to
heard
something
in
else
prayer
if they
earlier
can.
today
No, this is
from
important
the
stuff to be
Declaration of
talking about, and I'm
Independence.
happy to be talking about
We
it.
hold these truths to be self-evident.
Oh, here we
that
go.
All men are created equal by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And a chicken in every pot.
That's the United States Constitution. North Carolina Constitution similarly says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all persons are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the enjoyment of the fruits of their own labors and the pursuit of happiness."
And add a little
Do you
more
notice
there.
a trend here? Both the United States and North Carolina constitutions tell us we the elected, are here to protect life.
Yeah.
That's what
Now,
it's about.
not just the
Founding
life
documents
of the
give us that very
unborn
basic
baby, but we're also talking about the life of the woman
Today, we're
who is
not
pregnant.
talking about somebody who is in the womb. We are not talking about abortion. We are talking about a baby, a person who, even after the best efforts of a doctor to kill them, survives and is born alive.
And they are an alive
Listen to
person,
that again.
and
Born
it is illegal at that point to kill them,
This
right?
baby has been birthed. It is no longer attached to the mother in any way, shape,
Right.
or form.
Okay.
And while I am not a doctor, I freely admit that is no longer any possible threat, nor does it have anything physically to do with that mother any longer.
And that is not
is
part of the
born.
discussion. No one's claiming that
Thereby,
at this point.
According to our laws, should be afforded all the protections of both the United States and the North Carolina Constitution.
And it is.
I'd also like to quote from Rhonda Beaupre of Abilene, Kansas, who wrote me an email today. Rhonda points out very saliently, since a woman has already rejected the baby by attempting to abort it, the woman can no longer claim that this is a, quote, right to choose, unquote, issue.
And
Ladies
nobody
and gentlemen,
is.
this is not a social issue. This is not a political issue, nor is it a religious issue. This is an issue.
So it's not a
Whether the
religious
great
issue, it's
state
not
of
a social
North
issue, but
Carolina
wait till you listen to some of the other people who are about to talk.
Baby. Do you want to wear that banner today? I ask everybody on both sides of the aisle.
Because I'm preparing my
Really
ads
something
for
you're going
2020.
to be able to sleep with. Go home and tell your children, your wives, your grandchildren, that you voted to allow babies to be killed after they were born.
Well, that's not what
Think
it
of the
says,
horror that's going to bring to them.
but that's what your ad is going to say.
Are we going to kill a child on its birthday?
Ooh, ow, oh, burn,
Born alive.
snap.
That's what it means. People, I ask you today, respect the people you represent from your respective districts. Vote today to protect the rights of all of those that are born and alive. That is the spirit and the meaning of our founding fathers, those
Keith,
who
they
wrote our
are
United
already
States
protected
Constitution and the Constitution of the great state of North Carolina.
by all
Thank you,
those
Mr.
things.
Speaker.
And here's where the For the
Just
anti-choice
our guests
people
in the gallery
are gonna get kind of
we do
shut
not
down here.
allow interruptions of session either through applause, booing, or any kind of thing. So we'd ask anyone here in the public to please remain silent during the debate of the bill. For what purpose does the gentleman from Craven, Representative Speciale, rise? to speak
Oh,
on
this
the
guy
bill?
is a
The
piece of
gentleman has
work.
the
We
floor
are
to debate
going
the
to
bill.
church.
I sent my words out
If you thought
to many
the
of you.
prayer at the beginning was going to church, this guy wants to be a minister so bad. Maybe he is. I don't know.
This afternoon. Today is not just another day. There's a bill which you and I have to vote on, this bill. The consequences are much more far-reaching than whether this bill passes or fails in and of itself. All of the manipulations of subject matter, the twisting and the turning of the issues, the arguments trying to turn this into an abortion issue cannot quiet your consciences or soothe your souls.
Okay.
The override of the governor's veto on the Born Alive bill is significant because in addition to saving lives, it will tell the nation where North Carolina stands on life. Not where we stand on abortion, because you and I know that this is not about abortion. This is not about women's health. Though I expect it to be twisted and contorted by those trying to justify their vote to support death.
And me.
This vote
Yes, we
is a
support
vote
death.
for life. It's a vote to protect children that are born. They are not in the womb. They are born.
And it's illegal to kill
alive,
them.
And they're lying on a cold stainless steel table. And whether they're left to die there is going to be up to you.
In every case, they're left on a cold stainless steel
Please don't
table.
justify your votes, your no votes, by saying that North Carolina doesn't do that. Because you don't know what goes on behind the walls of the abortion clinics, and there's enough evidence to prove that it does happen. There are those who have testified.
There's one representative, the one who introduced
bill
this,
will ensure that
and
if
she
a child
provided
is born
no
alive,
evidence at all. I just heard
they are given medical attention,
old
the same
testimony.
as any other patient in any other hospital. It's that simple. And any arguments to the contrary are hyperbole and untruthful. Those of you who have been here a bit know
And
that
you should understand
I vote
hyperbole
with
and
conscience
untruthful
on each and
because,
every
well,
bill.
just watch.
The merits of the bill decide my vote, not the party, not the sponsors. I've had folks in my party upset with me for some of my votes. I've been accused of voting with the other side. You know what? I don't concern myself with that. I'm asking you to do the same, particularly on this issue. This cannot be a partisan issue. This is a human issue. I know that everyone on the other side of the aisle cannot possibly be against ensuring that babies born alive are given proper medical treatment.
Yeah, and if that's what this bill did, and that's all it did,
I know that many of you, and I know some of your hearts. Please do not let party expectations come into play here. Because long after you leave the General Assembly, you will have to carry the burden of your vote. I ask you to vote as an individual, not as a party member, not as a caucus member. Once a baby is born, he or she is a North Carolinian. And you and I have an obligation to protect their life and their liberty.
and it's protected.
God is watching us.
Here we go.
It's that important.
What purpose does the gentleman from Cabarrus, Representative Pittman, rise?
I think I got the wrong guy taking us to church.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a crossroads.
Here we go. Here's the guy taking us to
We're going
church.
to be deciding today if we're going to go back to the ancient evils of ancient civilizations, or we're going to move forward with the enlightenment that we claim to be ours today.
And we could talk
Kinda
about
like
that
when,
going back to the
Elijah
ancient.
stood on Mount Carmel and he told the people of Israel, how long will you go on halting on two opinions?
Ancient ways of
Yahweh
doing
be
things
God,
like
serve
into the
him.
1960s and
If
50s.
Baal be God, then serve him. And Baal, of course, is a false god of the Canaanites that Ahab and Jezebel were leading the people of Israel to follow, who required child sacrifice. There's a long history of infanticide. The ancient Romans, who considered themselves to be the epitome of civilization, still allowed it to be customary and legal for a father to have complete power of life and death over his children, as well as his wife, by the way, but complete power of life and death over his children.
If this were
They
court,
would expose
the,
them, leave them in the sewer,
attorney would be going,
leave them out on the
objection,
garbage dump,
relevance.
take them outside of town, leave them out in the wilderness, where they might die of exposure to the heat or the cold. They might be eaten by wild animals. Oftentimes, pagan priests would go and get them and use them for child sacrifice, or else raise them as cult prostitutes.
Oh my God.
Then the church came along. Christianity, which reaffirmed the old understanding of Judaism that every child is created in the image of God and therefore precious and worthy of our protection. And they would rescue these children and care for them and raise them as their own, or if they didn't survive, they'd give them decent burial. But they tried to take care of them as best we could. That is our heritage as Christians. Are we going to deny that today and say, oh, we'll go back to the old ancient ways of murdering our own children? I mean, children are born under various circumstances. I don't care
Or
what
letting the women die who are
Once
trying to
a
get
child
abortions
is
before it was
born,
legal,
has
before
entered
Roe v.
human
Wade.
society.
And so they did the back alley
Mahatma
thing.
Gandhi a long time ago said that the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. And there's none more vulnerable than a newborn baby.
Yeah, but we come close with a pregnant woman.
Jesus says, see that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that in heaven their angels always behold the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountain and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds
I believe they're
truly
passing
I
the
say to you,
collection
he
plate
rejoices
around
over
the
him
rest of
more
the
than over the 99 that never went astray. So
the rest of
is
the
not
house
the
floor at
will
this point.
of my Father in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Jesus also said, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. Christians should seek to do what Jesus would do, and if you think that he would approve of killing a child that's born, alive, breathing, struggling to live, and needing help, then you believe in a Jesus I've never known. My Jesus would not support that or approve of it. It's no different than what a college professor of mine did. He was a Free Will Baptist preacher. Sometime after I'd finished college, I guess I was in seminary at the time, he was accused of murdering a lady in his church.
So we'll see if we can follow this story, because it's kind
I
of
couldn't believe
twisted.
it until he confessed. And what had happened was he had borrowed about $20,000. He'd had an affair with her, and she wasn't paying her quick enough. He went to ask for more time, and she said, no, you pay me now or I'm going to expose our affair. He got angry. He started to leave. Well, he was kind of a little fella, and he was sensitive about his short stature. She says, come back here, you little shrimp. And he just lost it. He picked up a chair and hit her over the head. And she's lying on the floor unconscious, probably having convulsions.
Objection, relevance?
Panicked. He'd already messed up, but what he should have done at that point, if she's needing help, is to call for help. He would have faced some bad circumstances for what he'd done, but at least he could have tried to save her life. But he panicked, found a knife, and cut her throat. When a child is born and we choose not to help it live, we choose to kill it.
Which we don't do.
Absolutely no different than what my professor did in that case. No different at all, just a difference in age. In addition to this, Clarence Henderson and Clarence Thomas, I know some of you will say, well, they're just Republicans. But do you know who Clarence Thomas is? You remember him? Clarence Henderson. You remember who he is? A hero of mine. One of the men who in 1960 sat in at the diner at Woolworth's in Greensboro.
So we're going to grab a liberal icon.
He and Clarence Thomas both say that killing these infants is a return to eugenics.
Yeah, the eugenics argument
They're
is a
absolutely
kind of
right.
it's a fringe argument, but it gets brought up a lot.
A little girl. He didn't want a little girl. Or he thought he had too many kids. Didn't he? Or maybe it was deformed or something. Just kill it. Absolutely heartless. We're at a crossroads. What kind of society are we going to be? One that cares for the most vulnerable in our society, these little ones who need our help, whom God says deserve our help?
But it's a red herring, it's a straw man, because it doesn't happen.
Our own children. I'll tell you this. I know some of you may be afraid if you vote for this override, you may not get reelected. But I'll tell you something. It's the right thing to do. And I hope you'll join me in the understanding that if I lose an election because I did the right thing, so be it. Please vote for this override. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pitt, Representative Murphy, rise?
Speak to the motion.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we spoke on this the first time, I mentioned to everyone that I probably was the only person in here to actually deliver a baby. And while I haven't delivered a baby here in the United States probably since my days of residency, I have, in the last 25 years, delivered them overseas. And these come through, oftentimes, I can remember several of them that I delivered in Kenya when the child was only about 15 weeks. We knew that child was not going to live, but the child had a heartbeat. The child took gasps and breath and tried to breathe. And we would give that baby to the mother, wrap it in a nice cloth, in a warm cloth, and hand that to the mother. And the child usually didn't live but an hour or so. Well, the same thing happens today. I actually took the liberty of calling the chairman of obstetrics at my university today and speaking with him and asking him a few questions because, as I said, I've not delivered babies in the United States in quite a while. In the state of North Carolina today, if a baby is born through a miscarriage, through a spontaneous miscarriage, that has a heartbeat, regardless of its age, be it 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 22 weeks, 26 weeks, that child is given a birth certificate. And at 15 weeks, 18 weeks, 20 weeks, that child probably will not survive without being resuscitated, without taking into the NICU, definitely below 21 weeks or so. So the child is given a birth certificate.
So
and then
follow carefully because he's going
their
to
lungs are just not developed. The child is then given a death certificate.
it's going to make a tenuous connection to an abortion.
So tell me now in the state of North Carolina, where now there is no age limit, there is no term to when an abortion can be done, what is the difference between a child who comes out of the womb at 26 weeks before they should and one that is aborted at 26 weeks because someone wanted that to be done?
It's a paperwork
They both
difference.
have a heartbeat. They are both breathing. One will have a birth certificate,
Paperwork difference.
and the other one, for some reason, because of the intention of its delivery, would not. So again, I plead with you. This is not about the discussion of a woman's right to an abortion. This is merely the discussion of when a child is born alive with a heartbeat, attempting to breathe, that would get a birth certificate.
That's not in the bill.
Why we would not render the appropriate aid. The appropriate aid at 15 weeks, 16 weeks, we know is wrapping that child in a warm cloth and handing it to its mother, because we know the lungs are not going to be viable to allow that child to live. Yet at 20 weeks, things get a little bit more blurred. In 22 weeks, we get a little bit more blurred. We look at APGAR scores and their viability. Why, and I ask you to seek this with your heart, why would you vote against when a child is born with a heartbeat, even though the intention was for that child not to be there? Why would you vote against my colleagues being forced to render aid to that child, even if it's just palliation?
Because they'll do it
I mean,
anyway.
Please don't make this the issue that it's not. It is not about abortion rights. It's about right for existence. I plead with your hearts. Please don't throw the politics, throw the R's, throw the D's out the window. Please remember we are all part of humankind. And we are called to be kind and loving. That is all we're asking. That is literally all we are asking. So please, throw the political persuasions, throw the political arguments away. We talk about doing this for the children. Now we talk about doing this for our infants and for life. So I please ask that you override this veto. Thank you very much.
What purpose does the lady from New Hanover, Representative Grange, rise?
To debate the motion.
The lady has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to emphasize something that my colleague from Carteret County touched on in her remarks. It has been said that if this bill becomes law, that it will impact women's health. What I would like to say today is that impact on women's health is the impact it would have on a future woman who is born a baby girl. And for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to vote green on this bill.
Yeah. Nobody's saying that this would impact women's health directly.
Representative Jones, rise.
To debate the motion.
Gentleman is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As most of you know, I've had a pretty emotional week with the loss of my mother 1 week from today. And there's been a lot of reflection about being her son and being a son and being a daddy. I was not going to debate this. I felt that hearts were probably where they were. But a lot of pressure inside of me wants to ask the gentleman of this chamber a question to the guys. Your whole life, you have been reared to protect women and children. I just want you to ask yourself one question. Why is this any different? You have spent your lives, I know you, I socialize with you.
So this bill is not specifically
and I know the kind of person
protecting women,
you are
but many of the other abortion bills that you have voted on
button, ask yourself,
were
why
100% focused on the fetus and none on the live woman.
For our purpose, that is the
So
lady
if you're
from
going to protect
Hanover,
women,
Representative Butler Rice.
stay
Speak on the
consistent
motion,
about it.
Mr. Speaker.
Ladies recognized, debate the bill.
Colleagues,
This is the one
I
Democrat who will
recognize
vote
just how contentious
and speak
this
in
issue has
favor
become.
of
you only need
sustaining
to
the
look around.
veto.
It's clear. But I hope you can hear me when I say that I have never met a person in my life who is pro-abortion. Never. Not one. That term is terribly misleading and hurtful, and I can't really believe that people of good conscience still use it, but they do. That term is much like this bill, incendiary, and seemingly designed to upset and confuse. It seems that it is more important somehow to intentionally inflame people and to gin up voter outrage, to take a page out of some national playbook to undermine women's access to health care, than it is to really take time to evaluate what the actual effects of this bill will have on our North Carolina families. Whether you are willing to hear me today or not, I promise you that anyone I have ever spoken to on this issue wants abortions to be safe, legal, available, and rare.
Okay, hang on.
We've been down this.
Gonna push stop here for a second. As she is going through that litany of safe, legal, available, and rare, that is pretty common dialogue among folks who support abortions. And it was certainly my position before I got involved in doing things like the escorting and understood in more depth the concept of what abortions were all about, and why women got them. And it's not going to be a popular political point because it's going to be too easy to make hay out of from the opposite side. But some of the people that I'm working with have talked to me about the idea that when you try to make the concept that abortion should be rare, it's going to take women who want an abortion, have good reasons for one, even though I pretty much say you don't owe me an explanation. Whatever reasons you've got for yourself, they're your reasons are legitimate. It's your body. You get to choose what you do with it. When they start hearing that rare stuff, then they're going to question their legitimacy, their decision. Now, Representative Butler here can't stray into that territory at all because she will be eaten alive by the other side and by folks on our side that are still at the point of saying, yeah, abortion's not a great thing. I don't like it, but I understand the need for it, and I want women to have that choice. But I don't like it. It's not a great thing. So that's where she is making her political pitch. But I just wanted to express that is not a universal position, and there are some other ways to think about it. And down the road, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more. And now back to Representative Butler.
This path recently, albeit in another context, HB 2 should stand as a stark reminder of what can happen when we legislate to elicit a knee-jerk reaction out of folks just to get everybody good and riled up. without thoughtful consideration of the needless hurt and pain people are going to suffer as a confidence. I sometimes think we haven't learned a thing here. Members, right now, today, by practice and according to the law of North Carolina, as well as federal law, all living infants in North Carolina are legally entitled to the care that they need. Any overt act to injure or cause death to a living infant is already punishable as murder. I thank goodness and I am grateful that there are people who have enough guts and enough compassion in this world to be physicians trained to handle these high-risk pregnancies. If we pass this bill, I have to believe that there will be far fewer of them. To be a doctor that knows that he or she is going to have to guide and care for women and men, potential mothers and fathers, big brothers and sisters, during those times as their hopes and dreams are being shattered, well, those high-risk pregnancy physicians are among the people who are going to be damaged by this bill. And according to Novant Health, 60% of those doctors, 60% are women themselves. And that figure is expected to rise to 80% within 10 years. Why would we put forward a bill giving the public the impression that these high-risk pregnancy doctors are somehow villainous? So villainous, in fact, that we need a new law separate from the ones we already have, a law that has the potential to punish them with a Class D felony, a $250,000 fine, subject them to prison time, civil damages, punitive damages, treble damages, and attorney's fees for good measure. To do that to these caregivers is unconscionable. There is absolutely no need in this world for politicians to criminalize complex medical decisions that are best made by patients and the valiant physicians that care for them. Furthermore, there are rigorous licensing standards, established medical duties of care, and a North Carolina medical board that governs it all. Late-term procedures, such as the one contemplated by this bill, are rare and performed only because there is an immediate threat to the health of the mother or because the infant suffers an abnormality so severe, as Dr. Murphy has pointed out, that the infant is incapable of living for more than a very short time, sometimes only minutes, perhaps hours. Those minutes and those hours are what we are talking about. And whatever time there is should be spent with family, in comfort, in peace, and not in a neonatal intensive care unit with lights and needles and tubes. This bill has the potential to deprive North Carolina families of those precious moments.
So that might need a little bit more explanation. And I hadn't really thought of it that way until I heard Representative Butler talk about that. The act, the bill, would require the doctor who was performing the abortion to provide care. It doesn't describe exactly what kind of care, but it said appropriate care for potentially maintaining the life of the baby who's now been born. I'm not looking at the text of the bill right now. I've been through that, and I don't remember exactly what it said. But what she is saying is that a doctor may feel that they are now under obligation to go to great lengths to maintain life where a child is not going to be viable. It's going to die. Lungs or other organs are not well enough developed, and even the Republican Dr. Murphy acknowledged this. And she's saying that this bill could cause a doctor to decide that it's going to go into an incubator, it's going to get extreme measures, and try to sustain that life as long as possible, when instead it should be in the arms of the mother and live what little life it's got available with the mother, and then it would expire. It's going to expire either way, but one way the state is going to be looking over the shoulder. I don't know that in reality that what exactly that situation is going to be, because I've spent no time, and none of these people have spent any time in an actual abortion clinic, but that's certainly a possibility. Okay, back to you, Deb.
Dr. Eve Karkowski, a high-risk pregnancy doctor and professor of obstetrics at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, writes, and I paraphrase, she says, "When I walk into the room of a woman in crisis, one of a woman whose water has broken before viability, I introduce myself as the high-risk pregnancy doctor, and I tell her, you are the most important person in this room." Because women forget. They are so focused on their baby. They will risk their own lives to try and achieve viability for that child. The doctor says, I tell her, yes, this is a tragedy, but unfortunately it can get worse. And then the doctor says that when medically necessary and in accordance with her clinical judgment and professional guidelines, she offers her patient an abortion. The doctor says, I offer this option with the gravity due a desired and beloved pregnancy. It is a terrible discussion to have, full of grief, mourning, fear. It is what she calls the consummate no-win situation. The doctor continues to describe the dilemma of caring for patients as she runs up against laws made by lawmakers who don't seem to have an understanding of what a complex pregnancy is, or even a curiosity about just how wrong even a desired pregnancy can go. It seems to her and to me that lawmakers don't remember the suffering and the trauma of those women who are at risk of dying themselves. She adds that all of these laws like this one that criminalize physicians as they navigate an already difficult path, will have the effect of making the doctors forget who is owed their primary duty of care. And that will come with dangerous consequences because, as the doctor says, I can take the best care of her or I can protect myself, and I cannot do both. Colleagues, this bill is not necessary. It will create division between caregiver and patient. That moment of hesitation, of uncertainty, do we want patients wondering if their care is being compromised because their physician has somehow gotten all twisted up in a law and their own liability is clouding their judgment? In a crisis, when the toughest of life and death decisions are being made, I want that caregiver to have one thing on her mind: caring for her patient in the most professional, compassionate, and appropriate manner possible, according to her training, her judgment, and the ethical standards of care. I want that patient and the doctor to row that boat together and somehow navigate what is indeed a tragedy. The one thing that I don't want, and that you should not want either, is for that doctor to worry more about her own legal jeopardy than she does for the care of her patient. For that would be yet another tragedy. I urge you to vote no on this override.
What purpose does the jump from gas
compelling to me, rise? But once again, we are not changing any hearts and minds in this body at all.
Members, we go along here for long periods of time, and we debate all kinds of issues. Some are important, some not so important. They're important to the people running them, and we're happy sometimes, and we're frustrated and angry or disappointed, but we get past all of that. But every now and then, an issue comes along that's vitally important, that's a matter of life and death, and literally lives are hanging in the balance. And I would just remind you that this is one of those issues. And these come along rarely, and today is that day. And so I would just like to say, be careful what you do. Think hard. Make a good decision. Because whatever
Here
you
comes.
do, you're going to have to live with the consequences.
Yeah, ooh.
Members, on motion of Representative McElrath from the chair is happy to extend the courtesies of the gallery to two special
We're going to hear a little bit more of a threat coming up a little bit later on.
First is Gianna Jensen. Ms. Jensen is a lady I debated about earlier who was born despite an attempted abortion in the 30th week of her pregnancy. It was during a failed saline abortion that she was born alive, weighing just 2.5 pounds. After surprising the physician, she spent her first few months in a NICU and then eventually was placed in foster care and then adopted.
What they're not talking about, and what I couldn't find, is why this is an attempted abortion in the 30th week. But those don't happen on a whim. They don't happen just because a woman decides she doesn't want to be pregnant anymore. There's usually something wrong, and there can be a live birth as a result
she
of it.
also was privileged to watch as President George
And I
W.
guess
Bush
we'll note
signed the Federal
that
Born Alive Infants Protection Act in 2002.
she stayed alive.
And
She
is here
was
in North
kept
Carolina
alive.
today as an abortion survivor to witness today's
Didn't
vote.
need this bill
Ms.
for that
Jensen,
to
if you
happen.
Please stand. We're honored to have you with us today.
But she is, brought in from out of town, one of those out-of-towners outside the state to help them make their case here.
We also have one other additional guest on motion of Representative McElrath from the chair who is with us today. That's Claire Colwell. Claire was born when her mother was only 13 years old. As mentioned earlier, she had a sibling who was a twin. The abortion was successful in aborting the twin. However, it was not successful relatively to Claire. And so later on, they discovered that she was there. She was still in the womb. She was born alive. But as a result, and in part to the attempted abortion, she suffered from dislocated hips and club feet. In fact, she had to wear casts
Again, a
on her feet,
compelling
harness,
story,
eventually
but has
body
nothing
cast.
to do with this bill or the issues being brought up in this session of our legislature.
I guess has a relationship now, but she still suffers from the effects today of an attempted abortion. But she's a role model for so many, and she too is with us today. So, Claire, I want to welcome you as well with us today. Thank you. For our purpose, the lady from Carteret, Representative McElrath, rise.
To speak on the motion.
Lady has floor to debate the bill.
For the second time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm not going to stand here and talk long. I just want to remind you this is not about abortions or getting involved in the care between a woman and her doctor. This is about Gianna and about Claire.
Well, no, it's not about either one of them.
And those babies who are not here today to testify like they did. Because they were stuck in a closet to finish their last gasp of breath. Or on a cold steel table in a stainless steel bucket or pan. These are stories that are real.
Because you've seen
Nurses
them.
in South Carolina have sent me all this information as to why they almost dropped out of nursing. These stories are real. These are human beings. If doctors don't do anything wrong, they cannot have any consequences from this bill.
Yeah, that works every time. If you
Let's
haven't
think
done anything
about
wrong,
Gianna
you have nothing to worry about.
Claire. And those babies without a voice. They're not put in the incubator with the heat turned on, but possibly put in the incubator just left to die. Vote your conscience. But no, this is not about abortion. This is about a living, breathing, heart-beating human baby. May God put it upon your heart to do what's right.
Barely made it through that.
For what purpose? The gentleman from Pitt, Representative Murphy, rise.
Debate the bill a second time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Wasn't planning on doing this, and I did not interrupt Representative Butler out of matter of respect. But let me speak to a couple issues that she brought up. I went to training. I did 5 years of surgical training. I worked with a lot of obstetrics. I would go into delivery rooms, et cetera. This isn't an issue about access to care. It isn't an issue about whether somebody's going to want to be an obstetrician or not. That has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with this whatsoever. I took a vow, I took an oath to protect life and save life. I've stopped in accidents 3 times and pulled people out of cars. It's because of what I'm called to do, and probably many of you probably have done similar things. This issue isn't about abortion. This issue is not about pregnancy. It is about life. It is simply about life. And if a child is born, regardless of its 15 weeks to 25 weeks to 35 weeks, there are different parameters, there are different outcomes for that child. And no, there may be a law that says we cannot do anything intentionally to cause the demise of that infant.
Okay, watch the twist here.
But neglect is an intentional act.
Okay.
Not rendering aid is an intentional act.
And that makes it illegal.
I could drive by someone who's had an accident. I couldn't do it from the kind of person I am and the oath that I took. But not rendering aid is an intentional act. And I know my obstetrician colleagues. I know them. And if there is a chance that a child is to be born and able to live, then they want that. They do it all the time.
I think he's making an argument for us.
They bring life into the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pull this back to ground zero. There's no threats in here that what you have to do, you have to deal with on the final day of judgment. I'm asking you to make this judgment today. This is the final day of judgment for the state of North Carolina. We have a child who is born alive, sitting, breathing, with a heartbeat. To not render aid is an intentional act.
So it would be illegal.
So I plead and I beg with you.
Without the
This
bill.
doesn't, again, have to do with D. It doesn't have to do with R. It has to do with L. It has to do with life. So I would ask you, please, look in your heart and choose life. Choose the point where me and my colleagues are to renew our vows and choose life and render aid. Please vote to override this veto.
Further discussion, further debate? If not, the question for the House is the motion that Senate Bill 359 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor. All those in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote.
And I think they get about 10 seconds to do this vote. We'll see a countdown. Can't see the clock from there, but I think I switched to Channel 11's camera. A couple more seconds. And then they'll record that vote. And once again, they need 72 votes to override.
Machine, record the vote.
And they get 67.
Vote in the affirmative, 53 in the negative. The requisite 3/5 vote is not achieved. The veto is not overridden.
So they are done. And everybody, almost everybody heads out of the chamber pretty quickly. In fact, they knew the gallery was going to clear out. So they, a few more shots of the gallery. So they actually took a short recess to let people bail out and go do whatever they were going to do. In a lot of cases, it's talk to media, and some cases talk to me. Oh, so I was going to show you something here. That's me. For those of you looking at the picture up in the gallery behind my camera. So that's why I couldn't see the folks who were below me. Let's see. Can I back up a few? And I didn't have this switched on. I forgot that I put this in here. Okay, so there I am way up in the upper left on the screen up in the balcony, and I can't see any of these folks down there. So that's why I stole your footage, Channel 11. I'm going to call you the pool coverage for us media that don't have floor credentials and couldn't get them if we wanted. It's something about to get floor credentials, you need to be doing this full time. You can get a day pass, I think. I'm not sure what it takes to do that. Maybe I should explore that. See how possible that is. All right, I think we are done. Episode 61, calling it choice, not politics. The Veto NOverride. Remember, go to Twitter, hashtag NOverride, 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 and tweet that out and at Talk Triangle so we get the connection to the Triangle Talk Show on Twitter. We're also show up on Facebook. It's the Triangle Talk Show group on Facebook. Website, triangletalkshow.com. Email talk@triangletalkshow.com, etc., etc., etc. No commercial. We don't take any money. Maybe someday, when we get an audience of thousands, try to sell some ads around the local area. It would be worthwhile, but not right now. We're not anywhere close to that. I am Gary Pierce. I am the Choice Pro. I'm not really, but I play one on TV. And now we truly are over and out.